This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome to another episode of Cal's Corner here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. Folks, for tonight's show, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in last week, and I'd like to thank my executive producer, Mr. Rob McConnell. It's great to be back as part of the X-Zone family. And I want to remind everybody that it was Rob McConnell who brought Cal's Corner for better or for worse onto the world in the late 1990s. What he used to do is just call me, and we would I'd answer the phone, and for the next 2 hours we would just wing it. There was no script, and it was very refreshing to do because we never knew what was going to happen. We just spoke from our heart and hopefully from our minds, and it seemed to be fairly popular. So popular to the point that when I moved in Europe in the year 2000 and I was no longer doing the show for a while, I got a request to do it in writing in printed form, and that appeared in the Prague Post for about a year and a half. Only it was focused on technology issues because Czechs really aren't into the paranormal the way Americans are and people in Canada. It's just a European versus American thing, if you will. Then Cal's Corner appeared again in another newspaper for a couple of years, Metropolitany Express, until that paper was bought by its competitor Metro and put out of business, so it wouldn't have a competitor. That was the point of the merger. And then Cal's Corner continued on Rob McConnell's show for a couple of years out of Prague. And then I moved out of Europe and went to India, and I joined Daily World newspaper and then later Daily World newspaper. And to avoid any potentials for conflicts of interest, there was no radio work, and I pulled my website down for a number of years. But now that things are back to the way they were, and although I still do reporting for Daily World newspaper and so on, it's good to be back home where everything started, which of course was here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Okay, so for tonight's show, we've got a couple of things. One is there's 2 new books that I've written, which are coming out. They'll be available in the next 2 to 3 days. You can download them online. The first one is called the FBI's Secret Cattle Mutilation Files. It includes extra information from the District Attorney's Office from New Mexico. And the second book is called The Wisdom of Deepak Chopra's Random Buzzwords. So what I'm going to do in this show is talk about both of the books, why it was that I felt that I needed to do them, and I think hopefully you'll agree with the logic behind each of these titles. They are the first 2 of many, many that are in the pipeline, and over the next few weeks and months, more of those titles will be looked at and featured on this show, and we'll go ahead and talk about them as shows permit. And then in the last segment, I'm going to give everyone an update on the movie that we're doing, the docudrama, called The Zeta Reticuli Conspiracy, which is a movie about UFOs, but it is unlike any movie ever shot on the subject. It has a storyline which I hope will appeal to everybody, regardless of what their interest level is in the subject of UFOs. If you care nothing about UFOs, I think you'll still love the movie. And tomorrow in Dubai, here in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates, we are finishing the final filming for the movie because some of the earliest opening scenes take place in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. And we made 2 trips here to do that filming. This is the second one. And tomorrow we finish filming in Dubai, and then we'll be heading back to India to finish filming on the movie. And later on in the last segment of the show, I'll give you an update on that as well. So, real quickly, as many of you know who know me, I am the author of a couple of books. several of them. One of which, the first one that I wrote that became famous, was the Meyer incident. I wrote it when I was in high school. It was an expose of the Billy Meyer UFO cult in Switzerland. Then I did a sequel to it, which was really the book I always wanted to do on the case, called Spaceships of the Pleiades, the Billy Meyer story. And that was published by Prometheus Books. And to date, it remains the best-selling expose of the Meyer case. Its conclusions have stood the test of time, as facts will do. And it remains the book to be beat, if you will, in the market for exposing Meyer. So it was a nonfiction expose, and it presents briefly my results of my investigation when I went undercover inside the Meyer UFO cult, where during my secret trip to Switzerland, posing as a Meyer believer, I obtained evidence from neighbors of Meyer's who had some original photos he had given them years ago, had them analyzed, and was able to systematically go through and show how the case was a hoax. Another book which did better in the market was a couple years later, during the 50th anniversary of the Roswell UFO crash. I had a book that I wrote called The Roswell UFO Crash, What They Don't Want You to Know. And much to my surprise, it went on to be the best-selling Roswell expose book of all time. It's gone into several printings. It was the first book to expose the claims of Philip Corso, who wrote The Day After Roswell. So now, these new books, the FBI's Secret Cattle Mutilation Files, and again, the wisdom of Deepak Chopra's random buzzwords. These are the first two books of a series of dozens of them that are coming out on a wide variety of different subjects. And we'll be back in a moment to talk about them.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Is it science or is it magic? Once a magical thing has been scientifically proven, is it no longer magic? Or is magic simply the science of tomorrow? Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, on The Science of Magic, a syndicated radio program dedicated to combining the science and magic of today's dynamic and controversial topics to co-create new solutions. By triangulating information from today's leading experts from the scientific and magical fields, we uncover expansive and evolutionary truths you won't find anywhere else. Join us daily on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview the shared thoughts with the amazing guests from both science and magic. The resulting knowledge is unprecedented. As a gift to you, the listener, past episodes can be accessed on our website free of charge at thescienceofmagic.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Welcome back to segment 2 of Cal's Corner here on the X Zone Radio Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host. Folks, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show here, I have written 2 more books now, which are hitting the market. You should be able to download them around the weekend. And they are 2 exposés, but they're very different. They're not even on the same subject. And while my previous works had been on UFOs, and I'd done a video series on Kennedy's assassination, for example, this newest book is called The FBI's Secret Cattle Mutilation Files, and it contains extra information that has never been published the way it has in this book from the district attorney's office in New Mexico, because there was a very interesting in-depth study done of cattle mutilations, which of course is ignored by people who like to hype this subject and tell you that aliens are running around slaughtering cattle and taking their sexual organs and their eyeballs and their tongues and whatever else. And you can insert your imagination there to figure out what the aliens are doing with this, because none of it is true. So let me take you back through some time to explain why it is that I decided to do a book on this subject. Now, I've been around the UFO subject for decades. I started out when I was a very young boy. And of course, this was before the internet and Google and the modern conveniences that everybody takes for granted today existed. So back when I was a young boy, if you wanted to research something, you had to do it the old-fashioned way. Without an internet, without computers, you had a typewriter, you had to have transportation to get to a library. And then, of course, if you couldn't get to the right library, you had no idea of knowing where the data was. So it was often kind of trying to find a needle in a haystack. And I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in Northern California, which had plenty of libraries within rough transportation distance, as long as you could get a ride or drive there or take mass transit or whatever to find the archives that you needed to. And of course, they weren't the only ones out there. So fast forward now to the present. And the problem with modern UFO research today, as well as research in general in the paranormal, and you see this problem creeping and affecting journalism today even, is fake news, or let's call it news by deliberate omission. Now, there's 2 types of fake news. The first type is it's fake, it's not true. Okay, it could be about any subject. The second type is called fake news, capital F, capital A, capital K, capital E, fake in all caps. When it is the second type of fake news, all caps, it means that the story cannot possibly be true because it inherently contradicts or exposes itself as being impossible. Let's say, for example, that somebody says, oh, John F. Kennedy flew on his spaceship and gave his first speech as president on Mars. That's fake news, as in capital F-A-K-E, because the very dynamics of that claim is so ludicrous, it destroys its own credibility. But if I tell you that Kennedy didn't give his first speech, it was a Kennedy impersonator flown in by the Secret Service to fool people, that would be considered the first type of fake news. Could be true, maybe not be true. You'd have to investigate it to find out. And what unfortunately has been going on for decades in the so-called paranormal is both fake and fake news before the terms became in vogue thanks to the recent U.S. presidential election of last year. Now, the reason that fake news has dominated and ruled these fringe areas is because they are fringe. Look at the issue of ufology. A person who studies ufology studies UFO reports. The definition of ufology is that it's supposed to be the scientific study of UFO reports. But what constitutes a scientific study in the minds of most UFO researchers is relative. First of all, there's absolutely no requirements to being a ufologist. Anybody can call themselves a ufologist. There are no requirements to be one. It's a title that sounds prestigious, but it's really empty because it means nothing. Now, in the old days, when Dr. J. Allen Hynek was around, who used to run the Center for UFO Studies, and for decades was the scientific consultant to the Air Force's Project Blue Book investigations into UFOs, when Walt Andrus ran MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, which bears no resemblance to the MUFON today, which is a joke. Then you had the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization run by the Lorenzens. I knew all of these people. They've endorsed my work over the years. We were friends. They were mentors. And those days are gone. And these people would be ashamed today if they saw what passes for research. So when I was a boy growing up and reading UFO literature, devouring everything I could get my hands on, I ran across what are called cattle mutilation cases. And one of the reasons that I ran across them, just like the public did, is because they were featured in the news a lot. Why? Because they were happening. Now, what was going on was this, and I'm going to describe a typical cattle mutilation case, both in the UFO literature as well as in the mainstream press. What happens is a farmer or rancher, he goes out to look at his livestock and he finds one or more animals dead. The animals have their sexual organs missing. Their anus has been cored out. Their eyes have been picked out. Their tongues might be severed or cut. There's no trace of blood. It looks like, according to the media reports and the so-called experts who study these cases, that the cuts made on the animals are done with surgical or laser-like precision. There will be UFOs reported in the area, perhaps even the night before. Markings might be found on the ground. So people trying to piece together what seems to be disparate clues will say, well, maybe that UFO sighting was related to the death of this cow. Maybe those landing marks on the ground were made by some sort of vehicle or ship. People begin to speculate about all kinds of things. It may be true, it may not be true. But let's try a simple exercise in logic here. Let's say that you're at home and you have a nice, delicious steak that you've just cooked for dinner. You live by yourself, and the only animal you have in the house is your pet dog. The steak smells delicious. The dog's looking at it, wishing you'd give him a piece. And all of a sudden your doorbell rings and you have to go leave the kitchen to answer it. And then, while you're at that doorbell, answering it, opening your door, talking to somebody who's trying to sell you something, you see an unusual light in the sky. You don't get a good look at it. You don't know what it was. But eventually you get rid of the guy at the door because you don't want to buy what he's trying to sell you. You shut the door. You go back into the kitchen to enjoy your dinner that you spent a long time cooking. But all of a sudden that steak is gone. It's nowhere to be seen. There's no evidence it ever existed. It is just gone. Now, would you blame a UFO or some mysterious light that flew in the sky or confused you or baffled you for that stake disappearing? Probably not. In fact, logic indicates that the most likely cause of the disappearance of that stake while you were gone in the other room was your dog. Now, I use this as a real example in the book because this was an example in a report that was issued by a former FBI investigator when he was hired by the district attorney's office in New Mexico to work with local law enforcement to study these cases. He admitted and acknowledged that there were UFO sightings, but the very nature of them was so vague and some of the details were so exaggerated and distorted that you could not logically connect a UFO sighting with a cow that may have been found as much as 2 weeks later. There was no connection at all. And today, if you search on Google and you look up the specifics of these cattle mutilation reports and type in phrases like surgery with precision or laser-like surgery, you will see countless reports by mainstream reporters who report that it looked like these were done with, surgical expertise. And that statement made by journalists and repeated ad infinitum has become part of the cornerstone of the folklore, is dangerous because unless you take that carcass and examine that wound under scientifically controlled conditions under a microscope, you cannot say that the wound was caused or made with surgical precision because you're not doing anything to make that determination to back up that claim. And yet, as I cite and expose in the book, in the conclusion, and this is the book again, the FBI's Secret Cattle Mutilation Files, you see that reporter after reporter after reporter for decades have repeated these false claims. And they're so patently false, it's comical that any respective editor or newspaper would allow one of their own journalists to get away with it, but they do. So the reason I decided to come back to the arena of publishing, launching these two first books, first of many exposés, is because I thought that with the arrival of the internet and all of the delusional nonsense that has come out over the years since the internet has been popular, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to go through time, through the old classic cases, and say, look, you guys never got this stuff right when you should have. You always got it wrong. And now it's even worse because with today's technology, anybody can say anything, they can publish anything they want, and people believe wrongly that if it's not on Google, it must not exist, or if it's on Google and somebody posts anything they want, it must be true. People pick and choose their facts, and that's never been right. In fact, it is a dangerous habit. So what I did is I contacted the FBI, asked them to send me all the files they had that they were declassifying. They did that. There was no new material there that I hadn't already had in my collection years ago. And then I found, of course, the report that was prepared for the district attorney's office, found out that almost nobody knew about it. And other researchers like Linda Moulton Howe said, we just ignore it. I'm not surprised. That's her. And then I decided to put it all in a book, unedited, uncensored, so that you can decide the issues for yourself. Because that's ultimately what my job is as a journalist and an investigative reporter, is to lay out the facts, and it's up to you to decide whether you want to believe them or not. In fact, I encourage people not to take my word for it. Check it yourself, because the greatest thing about facts is that anybody can verify them if they wish to do so. So by going back in time and looking at classic cases which have totally been forgotten and are even unknown to the current young generation of Google researchers, if you want to call them that, Google paranormal experts, it's the cattle mutilations. And you can see that the core problems of what caused this to be a mythology in modern American culture, exploited by TV series like the X-Files, is the same problem that affects other UFO cases and so-called paranormal as well, including subjects like Bigfoot. And there's no evidence that Bigfoot exists. It simply is not there, despite what its promoters claim. So that's why I went back to the beginning to show people, look, you never got it right. You always got it wrong. You have no excuse, especially with today's technology. You're still making the same mistakes, pouring bad on top of what was worse before. So now you need to go back, look at it, do a course correction, and maybe eventually over time, you'll start to do the right things. So that's the point behind the book. Again, it's called The FBI Secret Cattle Mutilation Files, and it is volume 1 of an FBI historical documents series that's going to cover many, many different subjects over time, most of which will have nothing to do with the paranormal. We'll be back again for the third segment of this show after this commercial break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Ancient prophecies, legends, and current events indicate we're entering a high-frequency era supporting enlightenment. During expansive times, old rules fail, necessitating access to the ever-shifting currents of life for guidance. There's an ancient form of shamanism through which we can obtain the information we need. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with a great new provision for those interested in spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow, is an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes designed to guide and support you and your family during these times of transition. Embrace the magic. Empower your life. Study Galactic Shamanism at findyourpathhome.com.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome to the third segment of Cal's Corner, the radio show here on the X-Zone Radio Broadcast Network. Rob McConnell is the executive producer of this series, and it's an honor to once again work with Rob. So to briefly recap, as I mentioned, I've got two books which are hitting the market over the weekend. They'll be available on Amazon.com and through the iTunes bookstore. The first one, again, is called The FBI's Secret Cattle Mutilation Files, and it contains information that certainly most people are unaware of, and it contains the contents of a very unknown or largely unknown report that was done by a former FBI agent. He was in the FBI for nearly 30 years, and he was hired to get to the bottom of these strange cases, because what had happened is there was a lot of cattle that were being slaughtered or died under circumstances that seemed baffling at first across America, especially in countries like New Mexico, or states like New Mexico. And what happened is the FBI was contacted by members of Congress, including a senator, to look into the matter. And the FBI was reluctant at first because they didn't even know if they had the jurisdiction to look into such cases, because at that time, according to the laws, even harming an animal was not a federal offense. It was a misdemeanor, and that's unfortunate, but that's the way the law was. So after several meetings and a conference was held, the decision was reached by law enforcement, both local and at the federal level, to have the FBI spearhead the investigation. They formed a task force to look into cattle mutilations, and one district attorney's office received a grant to hire an investigator whose last name was Rommel to go ahead and study this mystery. He spent 1 year, and unlike people who are promoting the cattle mutilation myth that aliens are behind it, which is a bunch of hooey, he did a bunch of real research, including forensic research in the laboratory, and was able to separate a lot of fact from the fiction. And key parts of Rommel's report are published for the first time in this book. So that's a short summary of why I did the FBI Secret Cattle Mutilation Files, to go back in time to correct the record, which should never have been bastardized, if you will, in the first place, and to go ahead and separate fact from fiction. And anybody can check the data in the book. I encourage you to do that. All the documents are there, unedited, so people who doubt that I'm telling you the truth, well, you can check yourself. And as the top of the book says, up in the title stripe on the top, it says FBI Historical Documents Series Volume 1, because I am going to be releasing a lot of similar volumes, publishing declassified documents from different government agencies, so that they're all in one nice, neat little compendium, if you will. That way people don't have to go through countless archives like I've had to around the world to find a lot of these. I'm just pooling them all together so that there's all in one volume, hopefully a informative and valuable collection of data. Now, the second book has nothing to do with UFOs. It was a nice break for me, at least, but it covers a subject that's always bothered me for many years. When I was doing my book tour for Spaceships of the Pleiades, the Billy Meyer story, the tour was launched in the Seattle Bellevue area. That's an area that I fell in love with and later ended up moving to when I had relocated from Northern California. But one of the things that became really clear to me as a so-called foreigner visiting up there on the book tours is that it is a hotbed of New Age alternative medicine types in the Puget Sound. The market for that kind of stuff and hooey is enormous. People believe in all kinds of things. I saw all kinds of stuff that was just nuts going on up there. And I used to think the Bay Area was bad. Oh, it's nothing compared to the Puget Sound area as far as people believing in really strange things, and to the point where they have blown off conventional medicine to the degree that they put their lives in danger trying to chase rainbows and cures that just don't exist. So what happened was, when on my book tour, I kept running into people who were avid followers of the now world famous Deepak Chopra. Now, Deepak Chopra is a man who was born in India. He had to leave India to take his exam to to pass the medical exam so that he could go do his thing in the United States and Canada. The Indian government had passed a law at that time, as I explain in the book, barring Indians from doing this. So he left and took his test in Sri Lanka, passed the test. And eventually he met a very famous self-proclaimed guru named Maharishi Mahesh. You may remember him if you're old enough from the Beatles days. He was the person who taught the Beatles, and George Harrison in particular, to do what was called transcendental meditation. Now, the Maharishi Mahesh, by the time he died, like so many phony godmen who make it very big in India and worldwide, was a multi-billionaire. He tried to pass himself off as being very humble, but of course he loved things like Rolls Royces and fancy cars. And of course he had countless female followers and enjoyed the pleasures of that. I'll leave it at that. And basically the man was a fraud to the point that even today, years after his death, you still have some of his followers saying that they can teach you how to levitate on these flying pillows. And they've got many photos. Go ahead and Google, this flying pillows and levitating while on pillows, and you'll see photos of what look like people floating in the air, all through the power of their mind. But yet none of them can do it under scientifically controlled, legitimate conditions. Why? Because it's not true. And it's easy to take a photo of somebody who has hopped up into the air, take the photo, let them fall back down due to gravity, and it may look in that still photo as if they're really floating. So Deepak Chopra, he formed a partnership with the Maharishi Mahesh, was appointed as part of the joint effort he was doing to push Ayurvedic medicine on the American people. And then what happened is that Deepak Chopra eventually broke away on his own, and he started to write a series of books. And he was promoting what was a mixture of New Age jargon combined with scientific terminology. And when you listen to it, it sounds credible. But when you try to dissect each of its parts, it ends up making no sense. And his shtick became so predictable that a program was actually written, an algorithm, where it would take his words at random, mix them up, and come up with these phrases that, not coincidentally, sounded almost as credible as if he had actually said this phrase himself. So, being someone who has a background in science, like I do, science is my favorite area of study, physics especially, and I don't claim to be an expert in the subject, but I know at least enough that when I've listened to Deepak Chopra, I have real problems with what he says, and I'm not the only person to expose him. You can easily Google and watch on YouTube many videos of him being exposed by credible scientists. So what I did for this book is I ran the computer program hundreds of times so that it randomly came up with this deep wisdom that Deepak Chopra talks about. And I put it all in the book, and I let you decide whether you think random words strung together give you this deep spiritual advice for better well-being, better health, better whatever. There's many different subjects covered. Or whether you think it's a bunch of randomly put together gobbledygook. The experiment was very valid, because it was, if you compare the random generated stuff to what Deepak actually says and sells and has made millions of dollars of, it is almost indistinguishable. So this experiment validated, in my mind, the hypothesis that what he puts together and puts out there is as credible as if it was just randomly generated by a computer program. And in the book, there is the website listed where you can go to the Deepak Chopra random quote generator, hit the button yourself, get a randomly strung together piece of advice or wisdom or whatever you want to call it, higher enlightenment, insert whatever adjective you want. And what it does is it will generate it randomly for you, and you can decide whether that's of value to you. The overall lesson in this, folks, is that if it's randomly generated, it's essentially meaningless. And that's the message of the book. So what the book contains are hundreds and hundreds of quotes from this random generator, which shows that they're almost identical and indistinguishable from the so-called deeply thought out stuff that Deepak Chopra writes and sells and mass markets to the people, and has become a multimillionaire for doing this, despite the fact that he has been exposed repeatedly by many scientists. And again, you can see those videos on YouTube. You just have to bother searching for them. And that is why the book is called The Wisdom of Deepak Chopra's Random Buzzwords, because there's a match here, folks. And you can look at these quotes generated randomly by the program. You can go ahead and test it yourself by going to the website. You can run it through the paces, then compare it to that book you may have bought from Deepak and paid whatever for to get his, deeply thought insights. And you'll see again that they're virtually indistinguishable, if not identical in many instances, to just randomly generated gibberish. So I thought it would be an interesting book to show people, to teach them a lesson in critical thinking, and to show them that what's really on, that if you have somebody who knows how to structure just enough of the right word, package it in just the right way, they could sell ice to Eskimos, as the famous expression goes. And so again, it's called The Wisdom of Deepak Chopra's Random Buzzwords. It contains hundreds and hundreds of randomly generated, strung together quotes using the vocabulary that Deepak Chopra uses from his own Twitter account. So you know it's absolutely from him, randomly mixed together. And when you read them, they're virtually indistinguishable from the deep stuff that he sells you and markets all over the world. And again, that is the point of the book. So these are two nonfiction expose titles on very different subjects. Again, the first one is FBI's Secret Cattle Mutilation Files, which contains the uncensored, previously classified FBI files on the subject, as well as the district attorney's report from investigator Rommel. Then the second book is The Wisdom of Deepak Chopra's Random Buzzwords. And as the book indicates on the top of the image, it says the Hocus Pocus Dominocus Expose series. This is volume 1. Because after Deepak Chopra, I intend to do a book on Osho, the famous guru from India who had 99 limousines, Rolls Royces actually, because that's what a spiritual man would have, 99 Rolls Royces. Why not, right? And then claim to be poor out of the other side of their mouth. So I intend to expose Osho later on, and that will be volume 2 in the Hocus Pocus Dominocus series. Okay, we'll be back for the final segment of Cal's Corner here on the X-Zone Radio Broadcast Network. My name is Kal Korff, and I'm your host, and we'll be back after this commercial break.
The Earth is under ever-increasing pressure from untenable lifestyles and growing populations. Yet, viable answers seem in short supply. What if I told you there's an ancient form that can empower you to take charge of your life? What if your entire family could be enfolded and supported by life itself, finding safe passage through challenging times? I'm Gwilda Wiyeka, founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, with great news: an upcoming series of leading-edge online affordable classes based in an ancient form of shamanism, easily learned and used by your entire family. Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow are a series of online adult and children's lessons instructing your entire family on natural law, how to cooperate with and be supported by the powers of the universe. Visit findyourpathhome.com to find these unique and powerful classes.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyeka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you curious? Do you want to learn more about how the world works and have fun at the same time? Study coincidences with me, Dr. Bernie Beitman, MD, on my Connecting with Coincidence radio show, here on the XZBN network. Listen to Jungians theorize, statisticians randomize, true believers evangelize, while I categorize. I dance to the rhythm of coincidences. People who experience me see more of them. Maybe something on the show matches a thought in your mind. Let us know. Expand your mind to the weirdness happening around you. Synchronicity spoken here, there, and everywhere. For more information, put Connecting with Coincidence in your search engine and find my website, my social media sites, and my blog.
What is truth? Historically, we viewed things as either being true or false. Now, as we enter a more expansive era, we find the question is not, is it true, but rather, how true is it? I'm Gwilda Wiyeka, host of the Science of Magic Radio, a syndicated, internationally broadcast radio program dedicated to uncovering this ever-expanding truth. Join me daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, as I interview today's leading experts from the fields of science and magic to uncover the hidden truth between the lines drawn in the sand. What we unearth in our discussions is not only amazing, but totally unprecedented. You won't want to miss a single episode. In service to our listeners, past episodes can always be found on our website with our compliments at thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment here on Cal's Corner for this week. Cal's Corner is part of the X-Zone Radio Broadcast Network family, and I'm honored to be part of that family. My name is Kal Korff, and I am your host. So to recap again briefly, I have two books that are coming out over this weekend. You'll be able to download them from the Apple iTunes or iBook store, as well as Amazon.com. The first one is the FBI Secret Cattle Mutilation Files. It contains information that most of the public has never seen before, and contains excerpts from some government files that have never been published in a book like this. Then the second book is called The Wisdom of Deepak Chopra's Random Buzzwords, and the short description of that book is that a computer program was created that randomly strings together the vocabulary and vernacular that Deepak Chopra uses from his Twitter account. It then randomly generates quotes, and when you compare those quotes, generated completely at random via algorithm on many different subjects, to the so-called deep messages and stuff that Deepak likes to sell you and has become quite rich doing so over the years, you'll find that they are virtually indistinguishable, if not identical in many instances. So the lesson and the experiment and the point of doing this is to show you that when you put together things random and then you compare them to somebody who claims that they've done a bunch of deep think on it and they're virtually identical, well, you might want to re-examine your views on that. And why pay for something if you can get it for free? So in the book, you see the website where you yourself can go to see these random pieces of wisdom strewn together, again, randomly based on different subjects. And if you get something out of that, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. The idea, again, is an exercise in critical thinking. You can easily Google on the internet or check on YouTube many videos that expose Deepak Chopra. You don't have to take my word for it. Both of these books represent a cornerstone, if you will, foundational stone for a series. The FBI Secret Counter-Mutilation Files is, of course, the first volume of many that are going to come out that put together in one book many government documents so that people can easily browse the data and decide whatever they want after reading it. And then, of course, there is a Hocus Pocus Dominocus series where I expose some of these New Age gurus. Having lived in India now for 7 years myself, I've run into many of these so-called godmen, and don't get me started on that. This is volume 1. Volume 2 will be exposing Osho, which is an even bigger fish than Deepak Chopra, although he's probably less well-known in the West than Chopra because Osho never had Oprah Winfrey as a friend. Now that we've talked about that, and I brought you up to speed for it, and I hope you'll buy the books and find them to be of interest, let me talk about another project I'm doing now, which is really close to my heart because it brings closure to an issue that has been unresolved, ignored for decades. Now, people who attack me will say, especially in the UFO field, they'll say, oh, he's a debunker. Stanton Friedman has become world famous for probably coining the term debunker and putting a negative spin on that word. Well, I challenge you to get any decent dictionary, look up the word debunker, and you will see that quite logically it simply means to take the bunk out of something. It used to also mean that when somebody would maybe mock someone in the field of politics. Well, ufology and UFOs have nothing to do with politics. When Friedman and others like to say he's a debunker, that's not negative, that's positive. As I have pointed out many, many times to UFO nuts, they use their own peculiar dictionary that only they subscribe to. Now, there are some public source dictionaries out there where you do see some references to ufology in there, but those are in Wikipedia-type dictionaries where anybody can add anything, and that doesn't mean they have credibility. So the word debunk simply means to take the bunk out of something or to take the nonsense out of something. It doesn't matter what the subject is. It is not a negative thing. It is a positive thing. Why the heck would anybody want to have bunk in something? Because if it's bunk, it's not true. So when Friedman attacks debunkers, people who take the nonsense out of something, he's attacking truth. That's how twisted these definitions have become over the years because people have not spoken up to continue to correct the record. In my case, I'm not a debunker. I don't set out to start with a predisposed idea. I am simply a journalist. I'm an investigative journalist. I have many articles, thousands of them to my credit. They're matter of public record. And I try to separate fact from fiction. And I try to include enough data so that you can check the facts yourself, because again, that is the great thing about that anybody can independently verify them. Facts don't care about people's opinions. They don't care about dogma. They stand inviolate on their own. When I realized that I had the ability and the data to expose the world famous Betty and Barney Hill UFO abduction case from 1961, I thought, well, I owe it to the public to get this data out there. And I had these documents a long time ago, but I thought they were lost. I thought they were gone. When I left the United States in 2000, and I went to live in Europe for a decade before moving to India, and I've been in India now for 7 years. Right now I'm broadcasting in the Middle East, from the United Arab Emirates, because we're here filming the last scenes of the movie in Abu Dhabi and Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, because the opening scenes take place in those two locations. When these files were found again, I was surprised and relieved, very happy. And I realized at that point that I had a responsibility, an ethical responsibility as a human being, if nothing else, to get them out to the public. And I had a decision to make. Should I do just a dry style discovery documentary tailored only for the UFO crowd, release it and then walk away? Or could I do something maybe a little more profound, hopefully a little more entertaining, hopefully something that would be of more interest to everybody? Well, having been in Discovery Channel productions, probably the most famous one was Secrets of Area 51 Revealed, which was done when my Roswell book had come out. I starred in this 1-hour special where I was the guy who explained to people that aliens were not being reverse engineered at Area 51. There were no captured flying saucers, that the Roswell myth was just that it did not involve aliens from another planet. It was, in fact, a top secret military project named Mogul. This special aired. It was well received. That's why I had to laugh many years later when Annie Jacobsen released her book on Area 51, claiming, believe it or not, folks, that the real answer to Roswell was a top secret Russian experiment where Stalin had worked with Nazi Holocaust doctor Joseph Mengele, had taken 2 kids and altered them to make them look like children, and then put them in a Horton Brothers Delta Wing-shaped craft, flew them into New Mexico so that they could cause a panic among the American populace that aliens were invading the U.S. It was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard of, and someone of her caliber putting that in her book, giving that kind of myth any credibility, was, in my opinion, dereliction of journalistic duty. So I'm happy to announce that another book I have coming out in about 30 days, mark my words, is an expose of Annie Jacobsen's book on Area 51, proving that this event could never have happened. And I'm not drawing it from my own Roswell research. I'm drawing it from the actual files of the Nazis of World War II, which I've studied and got firsthand when I lived in Europe for a decade. World War II happens to be a favorite era of history that I have a passion for. And so it, again, is an attempt to correct a historical record that should never have been messed with in the first place, nor corrupted. And of course, Jacobsen's book went on to reach #1. Its publisher knew there was hyperbole in the book, but publishers like to do that nowadays because it sells copies and it makes money. So getting back to the movie, we are filming a movie called The Zeta Reticuli Conspiracy. And the word conspiracy in the movie is spelled capital C, capital O, capital N, then spiracy. The reason it's spelled that way is because when it's a conspiracy with capital C, capital O, capital N, it means it is something that could not possibly be true. It is a con job. And what the book proves, not the book, the movie, there will be a book adaptation of it, is that some of the promoters of the Hill case knew this data existed, but ignored it decades ago. The documents prove it. And now that they have been found again in their originals, and anybody can examine them, they would survive any forensic test. And unlike the MJ12 files, the originals are here. It proves that these people knew the truth, but for reasons they'll have to explain, they didn't go with it. And the reason I know that is because I was there firsthand. I approached this one individual and said, look, I've got the data. He looked at the file, flipped through it, gave it back to me and said, I don't know. I'm not an astronomer. And at that point, I cut most of my contact with this individual who's identified in the movie. We don't pull any punches. So what I did when I realized these files had been found, that they were not lost as I had thought they were, because I had left my whole archive back in the US. I couldn't fit it on a plane to come to Europe. I thought, well, I'm going to put together a very hopefully entertaining story involving real people who play themselves, So I'm honored to report that the two main stars of the film are two beautiful, incredibly talented women. One is Urvashi Tripathi, she's Indian, and the other one is Sam Ratan, who's also Indian. And these women are professionals. They're both award-winning models. Sam, for example, has literally been in 150 different modeling campaigns, and they play themselves essentially. I play myself, Kal Korff, and the plot is international. It has been filmed and features footage from 5 different continents, and the Hill case is woven throughout the story. And these people become united and get to know each other through the Hill case. And by the time these girls investigate it and check the data themselves, because I'm not going to help them do it in the movie, they do it, they have to do it on their own. They solve it, you see what that solution is, and you see that the case is solved. And that's the Zeta Reticuli conspiracy, and it should be out around the fall or winter of this year, and we are finishing filming in the next few days here in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and then back in India. Then it will be released.